My faith has really sustained me and has kind of stubbornly endured through all of the kind of the disappointments that I've seen from the church or from people who talk about religion in public and often can bring in a language of hate or division or rejection, and that just grieves me on a level, that really grieves me.
From Mamma Mia, deep inside a cupboard in my house, I'm Mia Friedman and you're listening to No Filter. Many years ago, when I was a young journalist working in magazines, I'd occasionally get my big girl pants on and write opinion pieces for the Sydney Morning Herald. And it felt really intimidating but exciting at the same time. My editor back then was a formidable woman called Julia Baird, who seemed so much older than I was, I think just because she was so smart and mature and, I thought, so serious. She was always really encouraging and warm and patient with me, and her suggestions and her edits were always absolutely spot on. She would always make me look at an issue that I thought I knew what I thought about it, and she'd look at it and make me see it in a totally new light every single time. Because that's what Julia Baird does, and it's why I wanted to talk to her today more than ever before. She helps people see things in new ways. You might know Julia from her columns in Australian newspapers and in the New York Times, and from the TV perhaps, where she hosts a daily current affairs show called The Drum on the ABC. She's been a journalist and an academic for many decades. She's actually a doctor because she has a PhD, and she's worked in the media both here and in the US in some really high-profile jobs. She's also written several books, including one about how the media treats female politicians called Media Tarts, and an award-winning biography of Queen Victoria. Her latest book, though, is a departure for Jules because it's much more personal. A few years ago, Julia was suddenly diagnosed with cancer, and you won't be surprised to learn that she experienced some very dark times where she was challenged physically, mentally, and even spiritually. This time that she spent in the dark led her to write a new book about how she coped. It's called Phosphorescence, on awe, wonder, and things that sustain you when the world goes dark. It's not a cancer memoir, far from it. It's actually an incredibly uplifting book about all the ways in which Julia found the light in life again and again and again in some really unlikely places. And that's why I wanted to talk to her today, because I thought never has there been a time where we more need to find the light in the darkness. Here's what else you need to know about Julia before you listen to our conversation. She is a single mother with 2 young kids. She is an incredibly loyal and generous friend, and she has a deep faith and a wickedly dry sense of humour. Here's Julia Baird. Jules, how did you know that the timing of this book would be so extraordinarily perfect?
Yeah, look, I did know that this exactly was going to happen at this time, of course. I could have predicted it all. I had no idea, of course. I mean, no idea. And I still am wrapping my head around what on earth is going on in the world, as we all are. When I wrote my book, it was about my own experience and things I'd thought really hard about, the subtitle being On Awe, Wonder, and Things That Sustain You When the World Goes Dark. And that was about things that sustained individuals mainly, like when the life showers you with mud, right? And as it had to me a few times. And I had not expected in any sense that the world could shortly go dark. There would be so many of us dealing with a level of confusion and anxiety and concern and fear that is really unprecedented for our generation.
Having gone through what you've gone through with your own, can I call it a cancer journey? Will you throw up a little bit in your mouth if I say that?
Correct. Right, maybe a little bit, but yeah, no, it's true.
How does it make you look at this? Like, does it give you an incredible perspective? Does it make you think, way to pull focus, rest of the world? How do you view it?
I don't really, it's hard to say. It's like some people are saying, oh, wow, it's amazing. You have this book that says so many things for exactly what we need right now. And someone just said to me, oh, that interview you did was like a therapy session. It's like, I am not a psychologist or a therapist or a scientist or a theologian, but what I do have is like lived experience of traumatic stuff, right? When my world just blew apart and I just didn't know if I could go on, and I didn't know if what was ahead of me, and I was very scared. And getting through that time, which really was, your world really, really goes dark. It's like, I was thinking recently, it was like, it's like, you know, like being in a theater when all the walls drop away, the ceiling drops away. It's just a light exactly on your feet, exactly where you are at that time.
You write in the book about after your diagnosis, how you were then scheduled for surgery and you tied up a few loose ends, sent texts to some close friends, spoke to your family, of course, and then essentially went dark. You just kind of withdrew.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be one of the people who got one of those texts, and I remember I was in the office at the time working with another close friend of yours who got the same text, and we just went into the podcast studio and burst into tears and just hugged each other. And then we both very much felt what you describe in the book of you pulling away from everybody and everything to get through it. Can you explain that process?
Oh, you never told me that story before. Yes, but everyone, I mean, I think this is what I was getting at before in terms of at that moment, you of kind of despair and concern, you almost instinctively try to work out what it is that will make you strong. And for me, I had to go to a place of calm and a place of stillness. And I kind of worked out the commotion and noise would drain me. And it was like a flower, like kind of closing in for the night. And it's not about I can't see anyone, I can't handle it. It's almost the opposite. It's just, I'm just like holding a yoga pose, right? I'm going to be really still. And it will require all my muscles to kind of stay still. And I knew I had my people around me. I knew I had those people that I was texting. You have kind of like an army around you. But when you're walking through those valleys, when you're praying and you're meditating or whatever it is, you're on your own. And I think that I think that's what I was doing. And again, it's not for everyone, but I have heard from other people that they too went to somewhere quiet. Silence and relative silence can be a really strengthening thing, I think. And
see, that makes me feel really scared, the thought of silence, because I imagine, there can be a lot of distraction with people spinning out dramas. You say you made a conscious decision to not get sucked into the drama. Is that about dealing with everybody else's reaction to your news?
Partly. Like, you do find yourself comforting other people, definitely. And you do worry for other people, and you worry about the burden on other people, their fears or just it can be really hard to care as well. I don't even think I necessarily thought it through. I think it's an instinct, and I think it's an ancient path. I really do.
The closest I've come to wanting to swim is actually reading your book, because you open with such incredible descriptions of your it's almost like a swimming practice in the same way people have your yoga practice or meditation practice. Talk a little bit about your swim.
I do it daily. We're not quite daily at the moment. In fact, it's closed, so people are going at different times of the day, but an ocean swim with a group of people, and we meet at the end of the beach at 7:00 in the morning, and then swim out to a headland, all wait there for each other, then swim around to the next beach across a protected marine reserve, and then back again into the first beach. It's about 1.5 kilometers, and it's this started about 10 years ago, and it's this incredible community that kind of gives you gives you so much on so many levels. Like, I think it gives you that you meet, obviously it's the regularity of the exercise. It's seeing everyone. Everyone tends to be so cheerful and happy that they're there and they can do it. You also see incredible things like there's dolphins and turtles and cuttlefish, and bearded sharks, wobbegongs, and these things can really make your day. When you start off your day and you're gazing down at something so kind of extraordinary, it's such a beautiful way to start the day. But I also think it's like people say that water meditates you. So you're in it and you're not distracted. You can't hear anything. We can't plug in and have a million podcasts or do whatever going at the same time. But all your other senses are completely alert, what you can see, what you can feel. And, yeah, I think that's what it is. I think it just empties your brain out. By the time you're back to shore, you're just ready to start your day again. And I also write in the book about awe because I think awe is a really important thing. And when we see these beautiful things and when we're on the fringes of this ocean or, again, in the middle of a forest, which is with these trees stretching above us or under an incredibly starry sky, like we feel small, you feel dwarfed by it. And I think that's such a psychologically healthy thing for people to feel. We then feel connected to each other. We then are more conscious of the fragility of the earth. And there's just something really freeing about it. And people talk about it all the time, just what being in nature can do. And on one level, it sounds naff and it sounds obvious. When you're going through crap, just get out as much as you can in the natural world and look at it and immerse yourself in it and pursue it and try to find moments of awe or wonder or whatever you can. But actually there's a whole emerging body of science around it, how much it can change people and how much it can shift you as a daily practice. And there's a lot of people in my swim group who've stopped taking antidepressants and, call it vitamin C and so on. I've seen what it can do. So, and again, while I'm writing this, I mean, and thinking about it and talking about it, I'm acutely conscious that it's not like we're saying, oh, hey, things are tough at the moment, go for a paddle or go and sit on a, patch of lawn or do that kind of thing or anything trite, right? It's acknowledging the situation that we're in. And if anyone's like, whatever you're going through at the moment, it's saying right now you need your strength for what is facing this earth. On so many different levels, we all need to be as strong as we can. And we need to work out what it is that makes us strong and live deliberately to pursue those things.
Tell me about Phosphorescence. It's the name of the book and it's the theme of the book. But what actually is it?
So phosphorescence is, it's really, I use it interchangeably in the book with bioluminescence, which is a chemical reaction from tiny little creatures, phytoplankton, that react to movement. So you see it in, in waves, those neon blue waves that are so magical. But there's also living light comes in a whole bunch of forms. It comes in, you can ghost mushrooms and fireflies and certain kinds of sharks and heaps of luminous, funky creatures way down in the sea depths, where I'm assuming you don't want to go, Mia.
Nope.
Yeah, where the truly ugly fish live.
Yep.
I miss Mr. Blobfish.
No. God.
Oh, anyway, so I became obsessed with the concept of living light because I think when I was going through this, I was like, I kind of want to write something, but I don't want it to be about, my time being sick, and nor did I want to say, oh, hey, you after being sick or going through trauma, you have to come out and be hashtag, inspo, hashtag shining light. You know what I mean? Like, bioluminescent. Like, no, if it kind of like was like when the world goes dark, what is it that helps you just to keep going? What is it that enables you to survive and just, keep treading the earth? That sense of like glowing without, combusting, that sense of a quiet glow. So I really became, once I kind of landed on that as a metaphor, I really became quite obsessed with it and started to pursue. I still hunt it all the time, actually.
You write about two other aspects of this. One is regard with an E on the end. Yep. I should pronounce it in the French way, but I won't. And the other is this idea of savouring, and you particularly talk about savouring in terms of your son.
Yeah, my son is so good at just that exact moment is what he loves. Like from when he was really small, from as soon as he could start to talk, we'd be sitting around the dinner table and he'd go, "What your fave part of day?" And we'd all have to say what our favourite part of the day was. And then you'd go through and then his always would be, oh, right, whatever we're doing right now. Like we could have gone on water slides, we could be doing whatever. And he's like, no, having dinner with all you guys is really just great. And
Wow.
and then you'd have to say what your second favorite part of the day was, and then it would just go round and round. He's just like a little ball of positivity. And like some of the highlights, honestly, if you ask him about the highlights of his life, like he'll say two things. One time on the Gold Coast, he had this bowl of pasta that he's still recovering from.
In a good way.
Bowl of pasta. Yeah, loved it so much. Another time now this is a really interesting contrast because we're in Washington, and a friend of mine took my daughter out for a clothes shopping spree, and they just went completely crazy. She just got all this stuff. And my son, I don't know, we just went then to a shop next door, like a pizza place, and he got this raw ball of dough and he ate it. And he was like that. He still talks about it. He just thought it was so great. So it got me thinking about that whole concept of savoring, like how do you actually kind of train your brain or get in the habit of anticipating and really soaking up a moment and remembering a moment, and how that really does in a way increase your capacity for joy. Yeah.
And then regard is about noticing things.
Regard is about paying attention, and that is really where the whole trajectory of the book, I really came back to that idea of, regard came from Colette, the French writer. She used to say that a lot, and I used to have it pinned up above my desk, that sense of, and especially when things are bleak and you're over yourself and your own despair and your own whatever. It's like, I could keep burrowing into this and I'm really not getting anywhere. The best antidote, along with caring for people around you and just looking out for people around you, which I think is a massive thing to do, is regard, is paying attention to the world and look for the spots of beauty and the people around you. And Colette was very much like that, and was actually supposed to have said it when she was on her deathbed, with a sweep of her arm, looking at the birds out of her window and the book on butterflies before her. So Mary Oliver is there. She's a poem called The Summer Day, and she just watches this grasshopper eating sugar out of her hands, and just in this moment of really intense observation. So, that kind of moment when the world slows around you, and she's truly watching this grasshopper. And she kind of says that she doesn't know exactly what a prayer is, but she does know how to pay attention. And she talks about this grasshopper that has flung herself on the grass and eating sugar out of my hand, who's moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, without the hashtag, I think, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. She says, tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I love that poem.
Well, do you know what most of us are doing with our one wild and precious life is looking at our phones.
That's right.
And that, I had such a sense of melancholy through a lot of parts of your book, not because of what you were writing, but because of the realization that I just miss so much of the world. I think I'm pretty typical. And, I've gotten into the habit of looking at my phone in all idle moments. So I was just stopped to get something from the shops the other day, and I jumped out of my car and I was just waiting to cross at the lights. I wasn't in my car anymore. And so because I had these, 30 seconds of waiting for the lights to change, I pulled my phone out. Exactly. Stuffed something in my brain. And for some reason I just put it down again. And then I noticed this little girl walking past, and she did this cute little dance and skip, and she was about 3 years old. And I thought, I nearly missed that. And then I thought, oh my God, I must miss 1,000 of those things every day. And not just things that strangers are doing, but things that my children are doing, and just the world around me, because I've lost that ability to just observe.
Right. And pay attention. Like attention is like such a great currency now. Like I pay the Freedom app, I don't know what it is, $10 or something, to shut down the rest of my computer so I can pay attention to the work that I'm doing. People go to black hole resorts where they can't get Wi-Fi and then spend their time scrambling up nearby hills. But, because we're paying for people to make us pay attention. But I think we kind of realize that. And I think hopefully we'll get better at kind of realizing in the ways in which we need to log off. You just feel so much better when you do. It doesn't mean that you can't spend a lot of time online. It's just making sure that when you're off, you're going out and paying attention to the world like you did at the traffic lights.
Some of the things, there are so many beautiful chapters where you talk about some of the ways in which you sort out phosphorescence in different aspects of your life. And one that just really shone through to me was your friendships. You've got some of the most extraordinary friendships. And I wanted to just pull out two, and that's Jo and Jock. Tell me a little bit about those friendships and those women.
So Jock has been my best friend forever, since school. We've known each other since we were 10 years old, and we're kind of always inseparable at school, at uni, at whatever, So, and we still speak all the time. We speak, and we still have dinner once a week, and it just has never faded really or massively changed, in the sense that we can just say everything and be ridiculous together. And she makes me laugh a lot. She's very kind of dry and funny and smart. And, she'll be the person I call when someone recently tweeted and said, "Hey, Julia, I've just noticed that according to your profile pic, one of your nostrils is bigger than the other." And
Oh, my God.
I'm like, what? I've never thought about that. Are you kidding me? So next thing, Jock gets FaceTime. She's got this massive close-up of my nose. I'm like, Jock, is it true? What? I never even thought about it before. And then she's like, no. And then I'm like, wait a minute, yours are uneven. Now we're on. So that's that friend, but when life is rough, like she's just friggin' always there. And when I really, 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 really needed my friends, and I was going through this surgery, she'll be the one kind of, she calls herself a kind of door bitch. She'll be like by my side in the hospital. She'll be organising like rosters to make sure that I've got enough kind of food when I get home. She'll be taking carers leave or flying down to Melbourne and doing all the rest of it. She's just, always there. And I just, I talk about friendships as being the cross beams of our resilience. And I tell my daughter all the time that friendships aren't accidental. You can meet people accidentally, but building them and caring for each other, and it's almost like the greatest work of a lifetime.
The other reason that female friendship sort of shines through so brightly through this time and becomes your phosphorescence is that you're divorced from your first husband. You were not, when you had your operations, you didn't have a spouse. And the women in your life, people sort of say, oh, I need to find my soulmate. What came through to me was our soulmates are often our friends, our girlfriends.
Yeah, I think we can underestimate that often they are the relationships that will endure for like 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Like they will stay. And you can have friendships that are forged, like Jo and Jock and my friend Kath, and when you're at primary school with Jock, or when I'm, like cadets at a newspaper, like with Kath, with Jo at the ABC, and we were like dancing all the time and going out all the time and just playing. And then still in my hospital room, someone sends me a glitter ball that actually was set up by the side of it. Someone else was sending me stupid sparkles and music, and someone else brought in a stereo. My friend Caitlin brought me sparkly pajamas. It's like you still carry the traces of that history, but you're still walking alongside. But no, absolutely, like female friendships, I just cannot even I just cannot imagine life without it. I cannot imagine getting through all of that without them.
And you talk about Freud and Freud. Explain what that is.
So we talk a lot about Schadenfreude, right? So the pleasure you get in another person's misfortune. And but we don't talk about Freudenfreude, and that's the joy you get when you see someone else succeed, especially a friend. And when my friend Kath was made, who set up the Sydney Story Factory, which teaches writing to disadvantaged kids, was made Australian local hero of the year. I think that's it. Anyway, local Australian of the year. I haven't got that quite right. I was so happy and so proud. I physically felt it, like for all the work she'd done, and I knew what it had meant. And I just thought, she's so great. And she was standing out there talking about the importance of igniting the imaginations of young children. And I was thinking, we never talk about this feeling, and it's really great. And I looked it up and I was like, oh, there actually is a word for that. Freudenfreude.
Something that you and I first bonded over, and that you write about, and I know gives you incredible joy, is fashion and clothes. You're the only person I know who can out-sequin me, which is saying a lot. You write about the concept of mutton and how 80% of Britons believe that women should start dressing down at 50.
Well, actually 40. What they say now.
Should we start being more sensible, you and I, Jill?
Yeah. Why? Why? Don't you love all those women on Instagram with their white hair and their kind of like wild outfits? I love them so much. And what people always forget is like the first time that phrase, the first recorded use of that phrase, mutton dressed as lamb, was actually to praise older women, not to ridicule them. There was this Ladies' Journal of 1811, and this was attributed to the future King George IV of England. And he was asked at this ball if he found this girl pretty, right? And he just like snorted and went, girls are not to my taste. I don't like lamb, but mutton dressed as lamb. See? So it's a good thing.
Oh.
You've got to keep your sparkles on, right? So you take all the benefits of youth and put it on. My friend of mine, one of my best friends, this bloke, he was a writer. He really went through a period of dating, and he always wanted to have be with a woman who'd had children, because he was like, I really want to be with a proven heifer. And I'm dude, you realize that sounds offensive. And he's like, no, I just want someone who's been through it, who's like, he just was really attracted to mothers. And it made me laugh.
That's fantastic. The other thing that's given you sustenance and you write about is the Lassie effect.
Yes, my dog. He's actually sleeping right in front of me. Look, I do write about getting a puppy.
That was a good idea.
Yeah, wasn't that brilliant? Oh my gosh, puppies! Like what? He just reduced me to tears. Like he had this terrible friggin' bowel problem and like was waking all night, and I just could not believe I'd done this to myself.
Why did you do it? Like, what were you thinking?
I just wanted a dog. Well, actually, to be honest, I mean, I did want a dog. It'd been a while since I'd had a dog in the US. And since I'd left the US, and my kids were begging me all the time, and of course we're going to take care of it. And my dad actually kind of wanted a dog, and I was like, well, when I go away, you can have a dog. We can kind of share it. So we've had a bit of a custody issue, though. That has not exactly happened. But so I was like, yeah, like great, let's do it. And but of course I found myself scrubbing stains out of carpet. My dog just was eating socks all the time, getting them stuck in his backside.
But also he is the size of a horse. It's not just like a regular sized dog.
That was the Jack and the Giant Beanstalk surprise of it all, because he was supposed – the moment I was trying to get my head around having this creature who's adorable, but, and he just grew and grew and grew. I mean, to a horse, as you know. He really is the size of a horse. And I was expecting a medium-sized dog. I was told he'd be no bigger than a Border Collie, and he is right up near a Great Dane, except really fluffy. So cuddling him is like he still likes that, but it's a full body experience. But he is beautiful, but he is kind of a little bit of a bit of a spectacle down at the beach. People take selfies with him and just tell me how big he is all the time. It's good to have people point that out.
Was he, in case you hadn't noticed, has he been an important companion? I know that my sister-in-law is going through chemo and her dog, often she's just too unwell to see anyone or to socialise, and her dog is like a lifeline for her.
Totally. It's just the beauty and the cheer. Again, I'm going back to Mary Oliver. I did read a lot of her over the last year or so, and she talks about how she's got a book of poems about dogs, and she says that one of the greatest sights on earth is seeing a dog bound about off leash, and it's so true. That just the grin on his face as he bounds about, just because he's awake and you're up and you're out, is like the happiest thing. Is just the happiest thing. And Mary Oliver's got another poem when she talks about going out and having a look at this incredible moon, and she's sitting there gazing up at it, kind of marveling at it, and then she looks down at the dog, and the dog is looking at her, gazing up at her and marveling at her,
Oh, yeah.
With the moon. So that kind of unchecked adoration and cheer. I have to say, my dog, Charlie, he's not very good at social distancing. The whole situation is not really clocked for him, but I love his happiness so much. Yeah, he's very sweet.
Hey, what happened when you announced that you were a doctor on Twitter?
One day, I believe we were discussing Barnaby Joyce. Now, and I tweeted something like, I reckon if this was Barbara Joyce, now this was at the early days of his affair being reported, if this was Barbara Joyce, we would have found out about this, a long time ago. And someone tweeted to me, do you actually know anything about that, or are you just a bitter old sexist? And I wrote back, yeah, I actually wrote a PhD on this subject, so it's Dr. Bitter Old Sexist, mate. And he like, and then I couldn't believe what unfolded. Like, people going, oh, doctor, you're such a wanker. Who do you think you are? You're arrogant. You know it means nothing, right? And I'm like, wow, like, really, PhD, for anyone who's ever done one, oh my gosh, it's a slog.
Yeah.
My hair fell out. You really, really fell out. I was so sure I was going bald. I was like, anyway, and I saw a doctor repeatedly about it, and she's like, the only thing that will stop your hair not falling out is finishing your PhD. No pressure. So, and it's not a sign of any superiority. It's a sign that you've worked really hard at something in a field that you love or are dedicated to, and you have you've got a professional tick. There's something that you've done, accreditation, And then I began to realize how gendered it was. And there was a woman called Fern Riddell who's written about suffragists, Dr. Riddell in London, in England, who was writing something about who was talking about the Globe and Mail deciding not to use doctor anymore. So she tweeted about it, and suddenly the same thing happened. And this man wrote back to her saying, your comments could legitimately be regarded as immodest. And another guy said she'd shown extreme disrespect towards white men who, he said, are generally far more useful to society than female academics, and pointed out that she'd have to refuse help from a white male fireman if her house were burning down. Now, she said this left her crying with joy. God. And suddenly there was this hashtag immodest woman everywhere, right? And I was like, this is so weird. And a lot of blokes piling in to say to me, well, they've had doctor next to their name for years and no one has ever pointed it out. And I was like, well, or said anything or mocked them for it. Why is it a point of derision for a woman to stake any kind of authority or expertise in the public sphere? Now, I do think it dovetails with the idea that a lot of people, the kind of an anti-expertise thing now. There's a lot of people saying scientists should be ignored, doctors, lawyers, who cares? They're all elite. So I think there are blokes that get some of that too, but it is especially the case for women. So I put doctor in my Twitter handle. And actually, I only took that off like a few weeks ago, I think. But all the time and still get, oh, so doctor, and I know that a troll is coming because they'll be like, well, what does Dr. Baird have to say? It's such a weird thing. I just ended up deciding, like, just claim your authority. Yep, that's right. Yes, that is the correct title.
I know you have deep faith, and I think that recently there's been a confusion between faith and organised religion, and the idea that if you have faith, you somehow believe in a whole bunch of things, by association. How did your faith sustain you, and how does it sustain you?
Yeah, I agree, and I totally agree with the confusion about organised religion and faith. And I think people have struggled to have faith despite organised religion, and I've been one of those. I mean, the way the church has been towards LGBTQI communities and towards women, which is something I've kind of written and spoken about a fair bit, has just been I think, a disaster for the church, and just kind of rooting it in like stale patriarchal ways and stifling women. I think it's been quite oppressive for some groups. But I think faith is something separate to that. And faith, when it's rooted in the idea of walking humbly and seeking justice and trying to work out how to love better and how to be better, and trying to seek a community or seek other people who might be part of that, and trying to read things around that will sustain you, try to develop a kind of prayer where you kind of create just periods of silence where you can just think about all of that and devote yourself to learning to love better. And in my view, that's what actually the church small c does best. I've seen it a lot in people around me, especially in my mother, and what it often really does well in communities. And I honestly wish that the hierarchies would there's just been so many colossal mistakes made, and I just think that we need to separate church, politics, religion, and I think the church should get on with the core business of caring for people.
I've always admired and I continue to admire how you've navigated that often tricky path as a feminist and as someone who is a firm believer in social justice. And I mean, you've done investigative reports into domestic violence within organised religion and copped a huge amount of flack, and yet that flame of your faith has not wavered, and I know how much strength and resilience it's given you. So I'm grateful for that for you as well.
Yeah, it's in like it's a private thing, in the sense that a lot of the public expressions of faith and those kind of stag fights about, atheists fighting with priests about who can win intellectual arguments, that stuff just leaves me cold.
You don't have anything to prove.
No, any kind of judgment or, on other groups of people also leaves me cold. But there are some pretty, amazing people out there doing really interesting work. We just don't hear very much about them.
So what, after all of this, are you now swimming towards? What have you deliberately chosen to swim towards?
Back to the surface. And when I talk about living deliberately, I don't mean to say every moment must be ponderous and profound. Almost like, as a friend pointed out to me in New York, when you become a little bit obsessed with trivia again, that's a sign of health. Like, oh yes, now I can care about some stupid stuff for a while. I don't mean that at all. You go back to the mess and the chaos of daily life, but also you have a clarity about, well, I am really going to friggin' enjoy what I have and where I am and the people around me, and I'm going to soak up every bit of nature I can. I'm going to hunt ore when I can, and also know that I can kind of dip back into a stillness and a calm. So you have to swim back towards the sunshine, the surface, the mess, and big furry dogs.
I love you. That's
too,
how I end all my interviews. No. Is that how you end your interviews on the drum as well? I love you.
Yeah. Love you, babe.
I love you.
Exactly.
Thank you. Your book is astonishing. You're astonishing. And you're phosphorescence in my life. So thank you for that.
Oh, you are.
Julia's book, Phosphorescence, on awe, wonder and things that sustain you when the world goes dark is so beautifully written. It's like being underwater in the best way and just being aware of this whole other way of looking at the world. It's available in all the places that you get books. You can buy it online to have it delivered by your local bookseller if you can, or you can buy the downloadable version on Apple Books or on Amazon. And remember, you don't need an actual Kindle device to buy a Kindle version of a book. You just need the Kindle app, which anyone can get on any screen. If you want more Julia, scroll back a little in the feed to our conversation from a few weeks ago about Meghan Markle and Megxit. Her insights into the lives of royal women like Diana and Meghan and, of course, Queen Victoria are just second to none. No Filter is produced by Melanie Tait, and from everyone at Mamamia, dotted as we are in our homes and cupboards all over Australia, just like you, we are sending our love to you and yours. Please stay safe and lots of love.